There are countless eerie stories shared online. Tonight, I thought I'd bring you one of them. A quiet tale to drift into, unsettling in its way, but soft enough to keep you company as the night deepens. This happened about 13 years ago, when I was a sophomore in college, attending a small liberal arts school in Suffolk County, New York. Within the first month of freshman year, I had found myself in a tight-knit group. 6 guys, myself included, and 1 girl. We were theatre kids, bound together by a love of ghost stories and horror movies. Freshman year was rough, but we carried each other through it, and by sophomore year, we were family. That October, with Halloween approaching, we decided to do something fitting. We wanted to find a wooded spot, somewhere dark and isolated, and scare ourselves silly. After some digging, we learned of a place about 30 minutes away, infamous for strange sightings. It sounded perfect. We split into 2 cars and drove out into the night. The shift was immediate. One moment we were on a busy road lined with strip malls and restaurants. The next we were swallowed by a darkness. The trees pressed in on either side, the roads winding and narrow. Streetlights were rare. Houses? Even rarer. Without GPS, it would have been easy to get lost. We had our phones charged, flashlights ready, but the plan was simple. Drive until the moment felt right, then stop. Explore. So we turned left, deeper into the black web of roads. 30 minutes passed. We picked directions at random, letting the night guide us. And that's where it began. The cars stopped. A log blocked the road. We stepped out, flashlights in hand, and crossed over into the trees. 2 narrow trails stretched ahead, splitting the night. A coin decided for us, right. The path was tight, branches clawing at our shoulders. We walked single file. I fell to the back. At first it was fine, just the crunch of leaves, the shuffle of boots. But the deeper we went, the more the woods pressed in. I nodded to hear things. Small sounds, far off, a crack, a shift. The kind of noises that make you think you're not alone. I told myself it was nothing, my imagination. After all, was another point to get scared? And we were 7 strong, young and sure of ourselves. What could possibly happen? We walked for 20 minutes. The trail seemed endless. Then suddenly it opened. A clearing, and not just any clearing. It was huge. An open field of tall, wild grass, stretching so far we couldn't see the end. The trees circled it like walls, hemming us in. Relief washed over me, stepping out of that narrow trail. But none of us expected to find something so vast, so strange, hidden in the middle of the woods. The night felt different there. Wide open, exposed, and waiting. The house stood silent. Dark, boarded, forgotten. We pressed close, shining our lights through cracks in the wood. Inside, nothing. But a white couch wrapped in plastic. A hollow room. A memory of someone long gone. The air felt heavier there, as if the house itself was holding its breath. None of us wanted to linger. So we drifted back toward the field, toward the trail we'd come from. The plan was simple. Sit, catch our breaths, decide what to do next. But before we could, Mark froze. His face strained. He lifted a hand and pointed. Across the clearing, on the far edge of the field, something moved. Tall. Lanky. Pale. It was skipping between the trees, swinging around trunks, darting from one to the next in a strange, playful rhythm. A grotesque little dance. The moon lit it just enough for us to see, but not enough to understand. At first, Jay, the skeptic, towering at 6'4", saw nothing. I leaned into him, whispering, pointing. "Look, right there." He squinted, and then he saw. His breath caught, sharp and ragged. He clutched my arm and whispered, "What the hell is that?" The figure stopped. It turned, and then it charged. We didn't think. We ran, back toward the trail, crashing through the grass, hearts pounding. Jay, still behind us, shouted in confusion, "Guys, what is it? Where are you going?" 15 seconds later, his voice cracked through the night. A scream. "Holy!" I glanced back. His flashlight beam was shaking, wild, as he bolted after us into the trees. The walk into the woods had taken 20 long minutes. The run back felt endless, and whatever was behind us, it was closing the distance. Engines roared, gravel scattered. We didn't stop until the woods were far behind us. When we finally pulled over, hearts still hammering, we spilled out of the cars and just stood there, breathless, wide-eyed, trying to make sense of what had just happened. We all felt it. That night had changed something. Nearly 15 years later, we're scattered across states, lives filled with marriages, divorces, children, and everything in between. Yet every so often, one of us will send a message to the group chat. Just a few words. The woods. That really happened, right? And every time the answer's the same. Yes, it happened. What lingers most isn't just the fear. It's the strangeness of it. Whoever that was, dancing manically in the trees at 1 a.m, wasn't afraid of us. 7 college kids, flashlights in hand, and he charged anyway. Did he know we were there from the moment we parked? Was he the sound I kept hearing in the brush, the presence I couldn't shake? We never stayed to find out. And I'm glad we didn't. But the woods weren't finished with me. Years earlier, when I was just 8, my family had moved into a house that sat right at the edge of a forest. My parents hesitated at first, worried about wild animals, about us kids wandering too far and getting lost. But the house was cheap, my dad loved the seclusion, and my mom adored the place itself. My siblings and I were thrilled at the thought of a backyard that bled into endless trees. At first, it felt like an adventure. But the dogs knew better. They never went into the forest, not once. If a ball or toy rolled past the tree line, they'd stop cold, pacing anxiously until we brought it back. Sometimes they'd just sit and stare into the trees, ears pinned back, growling at something we couldn't see. That was the first sign. The forest wasn't just trees. It was watching. The dogs always knew first. They'd freeze, ears pinned back, eyes locked on some invisible point in the trees. Sometimes they growled, sometimes they barked, but always nothing we could see. My brother once tried to prove it was all in their heads. He carried one of them into the forest. She fought him the whole way, then slipped free and bolted back to the house, tail tucked, as if the shadows themselves had chased her. When dusk fell, the forest changed. We'd hear it then. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Sticks cracking underfoot, branches shifting as though someone was moving just out of sight. We'd call out, but no one ever answered. And if we swept a flashlight through the trees, sometimes just for a heartbeat, we'd catch the outline of something. A figure, a person, or at least something shaped like one. That was enough for my parents. No more forest after dark. Even in daylight, we weren't allowed to wander far. But the forest didn't need us to come to it. It came to us. My sister's bedroom window faced the backyard, the tree line just beyond. One night, she woke and saw it. A figure, tall, wrong, standing at the edge of the yard, watching. She said it wasn't quite touching the ground, its shape distorted, stretched. She screamed for our dad. He ran outside with a flashlight, but she never looked away. The thing didn't move, didn't flinch, until the beam of light swept over it. Then it was gone. The house itself wasn't safe either. At night, the back door would knock, sometimes soft, sometimes frantic, always with no one there. My parents dismissed it as kids playing pranks, until one stormy night when the knocking grew urgent, desperate. My mum worried someone might be out there, soaked and needing shelter. She opened the door. No one. No footprints, not even a trace of rain. Just the sound of the storm. And the forest, waiting. The knocking never stopped. It came in waves. Weeks of silence, then nights of relentless pounding. My parents finally put up a security camera, hoping to catch whoever was behind it. But the footage always showed the same thing. Nothing. No one at the door. The camera did capture something else, though. Something worse. About 3 years in, my brother began having night terrors. He'd sleepwalk, always through the back door, always toward the forest. My mom, a light sleeper, would hear the door creak open and rush out to pull him back before he reached the trees. After the third or fourth time, he asked to see the footage, curious, maybe even amused, to watch himself stumbling around half asleep. But what we saw wasn't funny. The video showed him stepping onto the porch, then stopping, tilting his head as if listening. He shook it slowly, like he was refusing something. Then, with visible reluctance, he began walking forward, his body stiff, his movements unnatural, as if something unseen was guiding him, pulling him. It didn't end there. One evening, my dad was in the backyard when he heard my sister's voice. She was calling from the forest, panicked, pleading. He thought she'd wandered in and gotten hurt. He ran toward the sound, shouting back, but the deeper he went, the harder it was to place her voice. It seemed to shift, moving through the trees. He told her to stay put while he grabbed a flashlight. When he burst back into the house, there she was, sitting inside, safe, unaware. He never told us about the ninth. Not then. So months later, when I was outside with the dogs and heard my mother's voice drifting from the forest, calm, familiar, calling my name, I didn't question it. I'd just seen her inside. But still, I stepped forward. The dogs went wild, barking, snapping at the air, their eyes fixed on the tree line. My dad saw me from the window, rushing toward the woods. He tore outside, shouting for me to stop. I called back, confused. I'm just helping Mum. She's stuck. His voice cracked through the night. She's inside. Run. And I did. The forest had learned our voices, and it wanted us to follow. The forest never let go. After that night, the voice that wasn't my mother's, the dogs barking, my father's desperate shout, the house itself seemed to turn against us. The fence went up, but it didn't keep anything out. If anything, it made the presence bolder. The knocking grew constant, sometimes soft, sometimes frantic. Windows tapped, one after another, as though someone was circling the house, testing every lock. At night, we'd hear scraping along the fence, voices whispering just beyond it. The dogs would snarl, hackles raised, but never crossed the line of trees. My brother's night terrors worrisome. One night, my mother didn't hear the door open. He woke at the fence, barefoot, staring into the forest while the dogs barked themselves hoarse. And then came the last morning. We woke to find the back door wide open. The security footage showed it slowly swinging on its own, as though invited. No hand, no wind, just the door opening. We moved soon after, less than 4 years in that house, and it was enough. My brother doesn't sleepwalk anymore. But the night terrors remain, the anxiety too. A few nights ago, he called me. We talked, laughed a little, and then he asked, quietly, almost joking, if I thought the open door meant it had finally gotten in. He tried to make light of it, but said maybe we should start exercising, just in case something latched onto us all those years ago. But beneath the laugh, I heard it, the same unease I carry, because sometimes, late at night, I still wonder, what if it did? Then what if it never left? The port at night was a different world. Silent. Empty. Too big for the few of us left to guard it. I worked the overnight shift, stationed mostly at the front gate. The site stretched nearly 2 miles, but there was no need to patrol every corner. Nothing was supposed to happen after dark. Just 3 guards, the safety official, and the hum of the lights. The veterans liked to say the place was haunted. They'd tell stories about accidents, about deaths that had happened years before. I brushed it off. I believed in angels and demons, sure, but I figured the older guards were just trying to spook the new guy. For the first few weeks, nothing much happened. A few odd creaks, a misplaced object here and there. Nothing that couldn't be explained away. But the port was vast. Empty buildings, long stretches of concrete, shadows that seemed to stretch forever. And in that silence, even the smallest sound carried. It was the kind of place where, if something wanted to move unseen, it could. And eventually, it did. The gym was silent. So silent you could hear the hum of the lights, the kind of silence that makes every sound feel sharper, heavier. It was 2:30 in the morning. Just me and Mike, trading weights instead of our usual game on the court. The air conditioner was off, the whole building still. Then, a thump. We froze, glanced at each other, then we shrugged it off. Bolt building. Pipes. Nothing unusual. Minutes later, another thump. Louder. This time we radioed the lieutenant. He was at the gate, nowhere near us, which meant whatever we were hearing wasn't him. The sound came again, from the other side of the wall, from the court. We tried to reason it out, maybe the air system, maybe something shifting, but the air was off, and during the day, no one had ever reported noises like this. Then the thumps grew steady, one after another, a rhythm. We stood there, flashlights in hand, staring at the glass doors of the court. My chest was tight, my palms slick. And then we saw it. One of the balls inside the court rolled, slowly, by itself. The thumps we'd been hearing, they hadn't been random. They were the sound of balls being hurled against the plaster walls, but the court was empty. No one was inside. Something was playing, and it wasn't us. The glass door gleamed under our flashlights, and then, movement. A ball rolled slowly across the court. No one inside, no sound, but the steady thump of something unseen hurling balls against the plaster walls. It was as if the court itself had come alive, as if something was playing. The fear hit hard, my chest tightened, my ears rang, and I felt tears sting at the corners of my eyes. We didn't wait to reason it out. We screamed, bolted, sprinting full speed back to the gate. The lieutenant saw us, saw the panic on our faces, and when we told him what we'd witnessed, his own expression only deepened the dread. He said quietly, "That's why guys quit so often. There's something evil here, and it's not the first time." Then he showed us the footage. Dark figures drifting through office corridors, shadows slipping across walls where no one stood, lights flickering on and off, with no one near the switches. Even now, years later, I get chills telling it. That night was my first undeniable brush with the supernatural. Some say it was a demon, others a restless spirit of someone who died there. I don't know, but I do know this. I didn't last long in that job. And though the rest of the stories from that place are lost, deleted with the account that shared them, the memory of that night remains. Because once you've seen something like that, you never really stop seeing it. The woods had shifted. What had been bright and playful just an hour before now felt heavy. The air colder, the shadows longer. The laughter from our picnic still clung to us, but it was fading fast. We pressed on, trying to retrace our steps, but the trail didn't feel right anymore. The trees seemed closer together, the light dimmer, as though the forest itself, it had thickened around us. My friend kept glancing over her shoulder, quick, sharp movements, like she expected something to be there. I felt it too. That prickling on the back of the neck, the sense that we weren't alone. Every snapped twig, every rustle in the underbrush made us flinch. The clearing of ferns was gone behind us, swallowed by the woods. Ahead, only more trees. And with each step, the path seemed less familiar, less like the one we thought we knew. It was the kind of moment where the forest stops being a playground and starts being something else entirely, something older, watchful, and not particularly kind. The woods had swallowed me whole. Every step I took, something echoed it, 100 feet back, always just out of sight. When I slowed, it slowed. When I stopped, it stopped. The silence between us was worse than any sound. It was deliberate, patient, as though whatever it was wanted me to know it was there. I gripped the stick tighter, swung it through the air to hear its weight, to remind myself I wasn't defenseless. But the truth was, I was 10 years old, alone, and the forest was endless. And then I saw it. The clearing opened before me, and there it was again. Bigfoot's bathroom, the same sink, the same toilet, the same bathtub, all overgrown with ivy. I had been walking for hours, following the sun, convinced I was heading west. Yet somehow, impossibly, I had circled back. My stomach dropped, my legs went weak. I sat on a log and screamed, smacking the stick into the dirt, trying to drown out the terror rising in my chest. And then the footsteps returned, closer this time. I called out my friend's name, desperate, my voice cracking through the trees. No answer, just silence. Then, after a pause, the steps broke into a run, charging straight toward me. I didn't wait. I bolted, crashing through the underbrush, branches tearing at my arms, lungs burning. Behind me the sound had pursued, ahead of me the woods growing darker by the second, and that's when I heard it. Not footsteps, no branches, bells. Church bells booming from somewhere above. I looked up and saw the sky split open, a swirling black cloud darker than night, with a hollow center that seemed to call the world into it. The bells poured from that void, shaking the air, rattling my bones, and in that moment, I knew if I didn't run, if I didn't get away from whatever was inside that cloud, I would never be seen again. So I ran. The fence saved me. I lay there, gasping, the night pressing in on all sides. The bells were gone. The footsteps too, only the rasp of my own breath and the thundering of my heart remained. When my eyes adjusted, I saw it. An old wooden fence, half rotted, stretching off into the dark. My hands clutched at it like a lifeline. I afraid it would lead me anywhere that wasn't the endless, circling woods. So I followed it, step after step, dragging myself along the rough board, splinters biting into my palms. The forest was silent now, but not peaceful. It was the silence of something watching, beating. At last, the fence crested a hill, and beyond it, a farmhouse. I stumbled toward it, every muscle aching, my body scraped raw from branches and falls. By the time I reached the back porch, I was bleeding, filthy, and more exhausted than I'd ever been in my life. But I was safe. The farmer listened as I babbled down my story, his face pale in the glow of the porch light. He didn't laugh. He didn't tell me I was imagining things. He just nodded, quietly, and drove me home. It was past 9 when I walked through my front door. My family hadn't even realized I was missing. My friend had made it back hours earlier and assumed I had too. No one had been looking for me. To this day, I wonder how long it would have taken before they noticed, and if by then, it would have been too late. Because I know this much. If I hadn't found that fence, if I hadn't stumbled into that farmhouse, the forest and whatever was in that swirling black cloud would have kept me, and no one would have ever seen me again. I made it home that night, scraped and bleeding, but alive. My family hadn't even realized I was missing. To this day, I wonder how long it would have taken before they came looking, and if by then, it would have been too late. That was Virginia. But the strange didn't end there. Because I grew up between two worlds, America and Japan. A military brat, biracial, moving back and forth. And if there's one thing I can tell you, it's this. The way people in Japan talk about the paranormal feels different, heavier, more present. In the West, October is a season of ghosts. In Japan, it's August. Summer nights filled with televised ghost hunts, whispered legends, and stories that cling to you like the humidity. My friends and I were young, reckless, and obsessed. We sought out the places people warned us about, abandoned buildings, lonely shrines, parks with whispered histories. We thought we were chasing thrills, but sometimes it felt like something was chasing us back. And one night, in a quiet park outside Sagamihara, that feeling became something more. The night air was crisp, the kind of cold that sharpens your senses, makes the smoke from a cigarette feel heavier in your lungs. We pulled into the first lot at Asamisud Park, the headlights cutting across the empty asphalt. The place was quiet, too quiet for a park that by day was full of families and joggers. At night, it felt different, hollow. Jay was already itching to spin his car, the Nissan Silvia humming with anticipation. Tires screeched as he whipped it around, the sound echoing off the trees. The smell of burnt rubber clung to the air. I leaned against the car, cigarette glowing in the dark, and let my eyes wander to the tree line. Thick brush, shadows layered on shadows. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us from there. Every time I glanced back, there was nothing, just the stillness of the woods. And then, my pocket buzzed. The phone. It startled me more than it should have, the vibration cutting through the silence. I pulled it out, confused. It wasn't even my phone. It was my sister's, one she'd lent me while I was home. Hardly anyone had the number. The screen glows. Restricted number. I answered. Moshi mosh. At first, nothing. Just static. Then a girl's voice. Soft, Japanese. I thought maybe it was one of my sister's friends, so I explained who I was, told her she could call the house if she needed my sister. She apologized, polite, and hung up. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, shaking off the unease. Jay's tires wailed again, the night filling with smoke and sound. But 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. Same number, same voice. And this time she asked me something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. She asked what I was doing in the park so late. I hadn't told her I was in a park. The line crackled. Static, faint like wind rushing through a tunnel. Then her voice. A girl's, soft, polite, Japanese. I explained quickly this wasn't my phone, it was my sister's, and if she needed her, she could call the house. The girl apologized, her tone almost embarrassed, and the call ended. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, shaking off the unease. Jay's tires screamed again, the smell of burnt rubber filling the lot, and for a moment I let myself believe it was nothing, just a wrong number. But 10 minutes later, the phone buzzed again. Same number, same static, same voice. This time, she didn't ask for my sister, she asked me. What I was doing, why I was in the park and oh late. The word froze me. I hadn't told her where I was. I hadn't told anyone. I laughed nervously, tried to brush it off, but my chest was tight, my skin prickling. I told her she must be mistaken. She giggled lightly, almost playful, and insisted she thought I'd said it. I hung up, but the phone kept ringing, and with each call she seemed to know more, where we were, what we were doing, even what I was wearing. And then in a hushed voice she said the words that made my blood run cold. I see you. I'm at the field. The car doors slammed shut, and we rolled out of that first lot, the smell of burnt rubber still clinging to the air. Jay was restless, eager to find a new stretch of asphalt to tear up. R&I sat in silence for a moment, the weight of that last phone call pressing down on me. I kept replaying it in my head. Her voice. The way she cut me off, the way she knew. I hadn't said a word about being in a park, not once, and yet she asked me why I was there so late. The giggle still echoed in my ears, light, playful, but wrong, like someone trying too hard to sound harmless. I told myself it was a coincidence, a misunderstanding, but deep down I knew better. The phone was still warm in my pocket, as if it had a pulse of its own. I didn't want to touch it again, didn't want to hear that voice. Jay pulled into another lot, this one near a soccer field. The lamps overhead cast a dull orange glow, painting the pavement in long, uneasy shadows. He killed the engine, and the sudden silence was almost worse than the screech of tires. I lit another cigarette, exhaling slowly, and asked what was up with the calls. I explained, haltingly, the girl's voice, the questions, the way she knew things she shouldn't. Jay smirked, tried to tease me, said maybe I'd picked up a secret admirer, but even he couldn't hide the unease in his eyes, and then the phone rang again. Same number, same static, same voice. Only this time she didn't ask about my sister. She didn't ask vague questions. She asked why we left the light parking lot. She said she was watching us. And she wasn't wrong. The line went dead, but the silence it left behind was worse than her voice. I turned to Jay and, my words tumbling out as I explained what she'd just said, that she could see us, that she knew about my jacket, about Jay's car, about where we were standing. Their faces shifted from teasing smirks to something else entirely, unease. The three of us stared out at the field, empty, just the faint orange glow of the lamps spilling across the grass, the shadows stretching long and thin, no movement, no figure, nothing. And then my phone rang again. I didn't want to answer. Every part of me screamed not to, but my hand moved anyway, lifting it to my ear. Her voice was different this time, closer, breathier. I'm almost there. Will you wait for me? My throat went dry. I snapped back, demanding to know who she was, how she knew where we were, why she kept calling. There was a pause. Static. And then, in that same hushed tone, she said, I never said I knew your sister. The words hit like ice water. I spun toward the field again, scanning the shadows, my heart hammering. Nothing, just the empty stretch of grass. But the way she said it, the certainty in her voice made me feel like she was already closer than I wanted to believe. Jay muttered under his breath, "Nobody knows we're out here, nobody." His voice cracked in a way I'd never heard before. And the phone rang again. The laughter was thin, nervous, the kind that doesn't come from humor, but from not knowing what else to do. R handed the phone back, shaking his head, saying he must have pushed it too far with his teasing. Maybe she'd finally stop calling. Maybe. But the truth was, none of us believed it. The air in that lot felt heavier now. The orange glow of the lamps no longer comforting, but suffocating. Every shadow seemed deeper, every sound sharper. I kept glancing at the field, half expecting to see someone step out of the dark, and then the phone rang again. The vibration in my pocket felt like a jolt of electricity. I didn't want to answer. My hands were trembling. But I did. Her voice was louder this time. The static harsher, like wind rushing past the receiver. "I'm almost there," she said. "Don't leave. Please wait for me." Jad dropped the soda can he'd been holding. It clattered against the pavement, fizzing out across the asphalt. His eyes were locked on the field. "What the hell is that?" he whimpered. I spun, heart hammering, but saw nothing, just the empty stretch of grass, the fence, the shadows beyond. I hung up. My friends didn't hesitate. Jay motioned to the car and we piled in. Tires screeched as he floored it out of the lot, the lamps shrinking behind us. The phone buzzed again. Against every instinct, I answered. Her voice was different now. Lower. Rougher. Almost amused. "It's a shame you left before I could reach you," she said. The car was silent except for the roar of the engine. Then she laughed, a soft, broken sound. "Oh well," she added, "I'll just have to follow you to the family mart you're going to stop at." Jay slammed the brakes, hazard lights flashing, the car jerking to a stop. His face was pale, his voice barely a whisper. How the hell did she know that's where I was taking us? I powered the phone off. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. And for the rest of that night, none of us could shake the feeling that no matter where we went, she was still watching. The restaurant's fluorescent light felt like salvation. After the suffocating dark of the park, the glow of neon signs and the low hum of chatter inside was grounding, almost too normal, like stepping out of a nightmare and into a dream you weren't sure you had trust. We slid into a booth, ordered coffee, and tried to laugh it off, but the shakes in our hands betrayed us. My phone stayed powered down on the table like a dead thing we didn't dare touch. At first, our friends leaned in, eager for the story. They laughed at the idea of prank calls, teased us about being spooked. But as I laid it out, the voice, the way she knew where we were, the family mart, something shifted. The smiles faded, the table grew quiet. One of the girls, a friend I'll call Anand, asked me to repeat exactly where in the park we'd been. Her boyfriend lit a cigarette, exhaled slowly, and then said, almost casually, "You guys do know what happened there, right?" We shook our heads. He went on. Years earlier, a girl had been attacked in that very park, dragged into the green belt, assaulted, strangled. Her body left there. The table was silent. The only sound was the hiss of his cigarette. He looked at me, his expression flat. Some people say her spirit still lingers, but she doesn't rest either. If she called you, maybe she latched on. And now leaning forward, her voice low. You should go to a shrine. Get cleansed, just in case. I sat there staring at the dark screen of my phone, my reflection faint in the glass. And in that moment, I couldn't shake the thought. What if it hadn't been a prank? What if she really had been watching? And what if even now, she still was? The night had been ordinary. Two brothers, a summer weekend, Halo 3 glowing on the screen, laughter and trash talk filling the room. But when Dylan came tearing up the stairs, slamming the lock behind him, his face drained of all color. The air in the house shifted. I asked him what was wrong. His voice cracked as he whispered, "There's a guy on the porch, hands cupped to the window, smiling ear to ear." Before I could even process it, 5 knocks rattled the front door. We froze. The sound was deliberate, steady, too calm for someone just passing by. Dylan and I backed away, hearts pounding. I reached under my bed, pulling out the machete I kept there, handing Dylan the bat. He was taller, stronger. If it came to it, he'd swing harder than I could. The knocking grew louder, faster. 30 stripes in a row, each one vibrating through the walls. Then silence. I told Dylan to call 911. As he spoke to dispatch, we heard it, screaming from the backyard. We crept to the window, peering out just enough to see him. The man, standing there still, smiling, staring up at the house. His eyes locked on the second-floor window. And then, without warning, he sprinted, full speed, straight into the back door. The wood shuddered, once, twice. On the third hit, it gave way. We screamed into the phone, "He's inside! He's inside!" as the dispatcher urged us to stay quiet. Help was on the way. Downstairs, we heard him, smashing things in the kitchen, his voice sing-song, taunting, come out, wherever you are." The footsteps creaked on the stairs. Closer, closer. And then blue lights. Sirens, a shout, "Police, hands up!" The man bolted, crashing back down the stairs, only to be tackled at the door by officers, handcuffed, dragged away, still grinning. He was high on meth, they told us, looking for a quick score, but that smile, wide, unblinking, carved into his face, wasn't just drugs, it was something else. Something I still see in my nightmares. Even after the house was cleared, even after the officers left, Dylan and I sat awake until dawn, weapons still in hand. Because once you've seen a man like that at your window, you never really feel safe in your own home again. That's the kind of night that never leaves you. The house had been ours since childhood, a place of safety, of routine, but in that moment, 3 a.m., the glow of Halo still on the screen, the sound of footsteps, and that smile pressed against the glass, it became something else entirely. The knocks weren't just knocks. I mean, they were deliberate, relentless, like a countdown. 30 strikes that rattled the frame. Then silence so deep it made your ears ring. And then this screaming from the backyard. The man's face at the window, his grin stretched too wide, too wrong. When he sprinted into the back door, the sound of wood splintering under his weight, it was like the house itself was breaking. His voice clanged through the walls. Come out, wherever you are, mocking, sing-song, like a predator playing with prey. And then the footsteps on the stairs. Each creak closer, each one heavier. The blue lights washed through the windows just in time. Sirens cutting through the madness. The officers' voices thundered, "Police, hands up!" And the man bolted, crashing down the stairs, only to be tackled at the door. Even after he was cuffed. Even after they told you he was high, just looking for a score, the image of that smile stayed. Because drugs don't explain the way he moved, the way he seemed to know exactly how to push you to the edge of terror. That night, the house stopped being just a house. It became a reminder that sometimes the scariest thing isn't a ghost in the woods or a voice on the phone. Sometimes it's a man grinning at your window who wants in. Windfall had its own gravity. Not the kind that pulls you down, but the kind that presses on your chest. Makes your instincts hum like a tuning fork. A place where the air feels thicker, where silence isn't empty but watchful. At 13, you were already carrying the weight of change, new town, a new house, a family stretched thin by divorce. The house itself was small, unremarkable, just another 3-bedroom with a sagging tree in the yard. But it was yours, and for a while, that was enough. You filled the emptiness with the glow of YouTube, the comfort of routine, snack, couch, screen, hours lost in rabbit holes until your eyes burned. The house was quiet but not unfriendly. Not yet. And then he appeared. At first just a shape, a small figure in the reflection of your laptop screen, standing in the doorway behind you. Spiked hair, slight frame, a boy. You didn't turn. Didn't need to. The goosebumps rising on your arms told you enough. He was there. And then he wasn't. It became a pattern. Sometimes in the corner of your eye, sometimes leaning in a doorway, sometimes just a shadow that dissolved when you blinked. He wasn't in color. Always a silhouette, a smudge of darkness against the dim rooms. At first you told yourself he was harmless, curious, maybe even lonely. But the longer you stayed, the closer he came. Cabinets slammed shut, curtains swayed as if brushed by unseen hands. The TV flicked off without warning, and always, when you looked up, he was there, watching. The boy wasn't just curious, he was testing you, and the first time you saw him in detail, in your bedroom, staring not at you but at your sleeping sister, you realized he wasn't just a shadow. He was something else. 7 years old, maybe, spiked blonde hair, a red plaid shirt tucked into black pants, skin so pale it looked bleached, lips a deep, unnatural purple. His eyes fixed on your sister, unblinking. You lay frozen, heart pounding, too afraid to breathe, and in that moment you knew. Whatever he wasn't just a boy. He was something that wanted to be seen. That was the night he stopped being a shadow. Up until then, he'd been a flicker in the corner of your eye, a reflection in the laptop screen, a shape that could be explained away if you tried hard enough. But in your bed, in the dark, there was no mistaking him. You woke with your heart racing, sweat dampening your shirt. Something pulled your eyes toward the edge of the bunk, and there he was. Not a blur, not a shadow. A boy. 7, maybe? Thin frame, spiked blonde hair, a red plaid shirt tucked neatly into black pants. His skin was so pale it almost glowed, but his lips were a deep, unnatural purple. His eyes, icy, unblinking, weren't on you. They were fixed on your little sister, asleep in the bunk below. You froze, too afraid to breathe, too afraid to move. You knew he knew you were awake, but he didn't acknowledge you. He just stood there, staring at her. And that became the pattern. Some nights you'd wake to find him in the center of the room, watching her sleep. Other nights when she wasn't there, when she'd crawled into your mom's bed, he'd still be there, standing in the same spot as if waiting. You learned to keep your eyes shut tight, to pretend you didn't see him, but the truth was, he wanted you to. He wanted you to know he was there. And the longer he stayed, the more the house itself seemed to sour. Cabinets slamming, curtains swaying, the TV flicking off. The air heavy with something that wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was as if he was testing you, seeing how far he could push before you broke. And deep down you knew this wasn't just a little boy. This was something else. That bathtub became the most terrifying place in the house. It should have been a comfort. Warm water, a moment of quiet, but instead it felt like drowning before you even slept under. Every time you leaned back to rinse your hair, your chest would seize, your lungs would burn, and you'd feel that awful weight pressing down, as if something unseen was holding you there. You'd scream for your mother, desperate, paralyzed with fear. Even looking at the tub when it was empty made your heart race. The anxiety grew until baths weren't just uncomfortable, they were unbearable. Pools, lakes, even the thought of swimming became poisoned by that same dread. And it all tied back to him. The boy, the one who stood in the center of your room at night, staring at your sister, the one who never spoke, but whose presence was enough to unravel your family from the inside out. Because it wasn't just you, the house itself seemed to sour. Your sisters fought constantly. Your mother drank more, her sweetness curdling into rage. The warmth of family life drained away, replaced by something darker, heavier. And every time you saw him, skin white as chalk, lips purple as bruises, you knew he wasn't just curious. He was feeding on something, testing you, pushing you. The dog next door became your only refuge. You'd curl up beside it, clinging to the steady rhythm of its breathing, waiting for someone, anyone, to come home. But the boy always waited. In the doorway, in the center of the room by the tub, and deep down, you began to understand. He wasn't just a shadow of the house, he was part of it. That bonfire confession might have felt like a gut punch. Years of silence subtly unraveling into shared truth. You weren't crazy. You weren't alone. Your mom admitted at first, "Oh, for sure, that place is haunted as hell." And then your sister, her voice steady but sharp. There was a little boy there, but he was not a little boy, he was evil. The pieces clicked into place. The reason she was always gone at Olivia's, the reason your mom sometimes pulled your sister into her bed at night. They had seen him too. Your mom described the old woman standing in the dining room, hissing, "Get out of my house," waking in the night to find her at the foot of the bed, glaring, furious, and the boy sitting on the dresser, swinging his legs like he belonged there. And then, the moment that froze you. He hopped off the dresser, your mum said, her eyes fixed on the firelight, walked to the side of my bed, and then he jumped at me, straight at me, and disappeared. The fire crackled. No one spoke for a long time. Later, your mum told you what she learned after leaving Windfall. The house had belonged to an old woman who died there, and the boy? He drowned in the 1970s. Explained the water, the baths, the suffocating dread that wrapped around you every time you leaned back in the tub. But it didn't explain the rest. The way he watched your sister, the way he tested you, the way the house itself seemed to rot around him. Because maybe he wasn't just a boy. Maybe he wasn't even the boy at all. Maybe he was something that wore the boy's face. And Windfall, thick with its strange, heavy air, was the perfect place for it to linger. That detail, the flash of black hair slipping past the doorway, is the kind of moment that freezes you in place. Because Emma was blonde. You knew instantly that whatever had just run down that hallway wasn't her. You rushed to her room anyway, heart pounding, and threw the door open. She was there, sitting up in bed, rubbing her eyes in confusion. Safe, blonde hair mussed from sleep. She shook her head when you asked if she'd gone to the bathroom. You searched under the bed, in the closet, every corner of the room. Nothing. Just the faint glow of her nightlight. You tucked it back in, trying to keep your voice steady, and told her you were just checking for monsters. As you stepped out, leaving the door cracked, you heard her small voice behind you. At first you thought she was calling you back, but then the words sank in. You should have said something. Don't scare her. I really like her. The air went cold. Emma wasn't talking to you. From then on, you adapted. You didn't challenge it, didn't try to banish it. Instead, you made space for it. If Emma was drawing, you'd set out an extra spot. If she was playing, you'd leave room for another. And strangely, it worked. Emma was happy. The house was calm. And nothing ever startled you again. It was as if whatever was there only wanted to be acknowledged. There are a lot of scary paranormal stories on Reddit. Tonight, I want to share one with you. Settle in. The wall hook was still there. 2 push pins. So the picture could not have just broken off the wall and fallen. Another night of anxiety. Another night of wondering what was happening in my home. My mom had a key, but no one else did. And she lived 40 minutes away. This kept happening between 2 and 4 in the morning. I started questioning my sanity. I started wondering if I was haunted. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want them to think I was losing my mind. The feeling of being watched never left. Sometimes overwhelming, sometimes faint, but always there. One night after putting the baby down, I went to shower. I was soaping up when the curtain began to move. The air turned cold, and I knew I was not alone. I rinsed quickly, stepped out, told myself it didn't happen. Later, in bed, I tried to read. The room grew cold again, and then the pillow beside me compressed, as if someone invisible had laid their head down. That was it. I didn't need more proof. My home was haunted. Terrified, I grabbed my baby, the carrier, the keys, boots, jacket. I even left my purse behind. It was winter, not the kind of night you run out in a nightgown, but I did. I drove to my parents, woke my mom, told her everything. Told her I wasn't going back. My mom is a spiritualist. She attends a church. The reverend there is a medium, and she said she could help me. I called the next day. Awkward. Unsure, I said, I think I have a ghost. I need some help. She didn't hesitate. Actually, you have 3. An old woman, silent, sitting in the corner, a grandmother. A little girl, young, playful, and a young man, the one she was most concerned about. I wasn't a spiritualist then. I wasn't even sure I believed, but I'd seen and heard things I couldn't explain, and what she said about the little girl matched the voice I'd heard on the baby monitor. So I trusted her, because I needed help. We arranged for her to come the next day. She would bring another medium. They would clear the man out. I hadn't told my mom until the night before. She hadn't told anyone else, and yet this woman knew. She knew exactly what was happening without ever stepping foot in my home. She asked if she wanted to stay while she worked. I said yes, but not in the same room. I left the baby with my parents. I went back to the apartment, and immediately I felt it again, that heavy sense of being watched. When she arrived with her friend, they walked through the house. I stayed in my room, and then suddenly something shifted. The air felt lighter. I felt happier. I stepped into the living room. She told me what had happened. The spirit was a young man. He had died before he ever had a family of his own, and when he saw me alone with a baby, he decided to play house, pretending we were his. She told him he was not welcome, that he needed to leave, and he did. No argument. She explained the many people had lived in that apartment before me, and with so many lives passing through, there was always a chance of energies lingering. But that night, he was gone. She suggested salt rock lamps throughout my house. I still haven't used them. And she told me to ask for protection when I sleep, to imagine a blanket of white light wrapped around me. After that, I never had another ghostly intruder, not one that wasn't welcome. It was the first time I knew for certain ghosts are real, and they have their own reasons for doing what they do. I look back now and I'm no longer afraid. Not of spirits, only of darker things, the kind I steer clear of. No Ouija boards, nothing unnatural. My child is 16 now. He doesn't remember any of this, but for me it's burned into memory. One of the scariest times of my life. When I hear other people's ghost stories, I feel for them because it brings me back to that time. That feeling of being so out of control. The Reverend never asked for anything in return. Later I found out my mom had made a small donation in my name. The church was non-profit. The mediums taught and cleared for no profit, only to help, only to educate. I've seen people use fear to profit. This was not that. For that, I'm grateful. Grateful to my mom and to the two who came like spiritual bouncers and gave me my home back. I used to work night shifts, and every spooky season the stories come out. Everyone shares the creepy things they've been through. I almost never tell this one because it isn't the kind of story you laugh about over beers. I work nights at a large manufacturing facility. The crew was small, 5 security, 5 of us in admin and packing. I sat with security most nights. They rotated between patrols and the cameras. It was usually quiet, silent, boring. But the building had a story, a haunted one, and I was about to learn why. No one wanted the night shift. Not really. The rumors were enough. But the truth was, nothing had ever happened there. No deaths, no accidents, no history of fire or rebuilding. Just a big, dark, empty facility. And yet, stories spread, as they always do. The place was surrounded by woods. At night, it felt impossibly large, imposing, silent. The motion-activated lights didn't help. They flickered on and off, leaving long stretches of shadow. Every sound echoed, every creak carried. But still, nothing ever happened. Until this night. It was late October, a week or two before Halloween. Halfway through my shift, I stepped out for my break. It was chilly. I went to my car for a heavier jacket, lit a cigarette, sat just outside the back door. The fence was close, 10 yards maybe. The only light was motion activated. I had to wave my arms every so often to keep it alive. Beyond that circle of light, it was all grass and shadows. I watched videos on my phone. The light cut out. I sat in the dark, sipping coffee, finishing my smoke. When I reached up to wave again, the light flickered back on, and that's when I heard it, the fence. A faint jingle of metal. We got animals out there sometimes. Easy enough to explain, that's what I told myself, but then it kept going. A steady, deliberate rattle. I stood up, looked across the yard. The light didn't reach that far, just a pale circle on the ground, and for some reason, I said hello. The sound stopped. I squinted into the dark, waiting for my eyes to adjust. The light went out again, and in the moonlight, faint but steady, the fence was still there, and something else was with it. That's the kind of story that lingers in your head long after it's told. Not because of what you saw, but because of what you didn't. The fence rattling, the figure sprinting, the doorknob jerking under your hand. Those are finical, literal details. You felt the weight of it. You heard the metal thrash. You braced yourself against the door. And yet, where the cameras rolled back the tape, there was nothing. Just you, alone in the dark, reacting to something that shouldn't have been there. That's what makes it so unsettling. If it'd been prank, there'd be a body on the footage. If it'd be an animal, there'd be movement in the frame. But instead, the evidence erased itself, leaving only your memory of the sound, the pressure, the panic. And that's the coolest part of experiences like this. The way they isolate you. Your coworker laughed it off, chalked it up to nerves or Halloween jitters. But you know what you felt. You know what you fought against on the other side of that door. It's the kind of encounter that doesn't just scare you in the moment, it rewrites the way you see the space afterward. Every shift, every patrol, every flicker of the motion lights carries the echo of that night. Because once you've stood face to face with something that leaves no trace, you realize the scariest things aren't the ones caught on camera. They're the ones that choose not to be. When I first saw the video, I thought it had to be a prank. Maybe they'd messed with the footage. Maybe someone had slipped outside to scare me. But they swore they hadn't. In fact, they thought I was the one pulling a joke on them. We went back and forth. Whose idea was this? Who's messing with who? Until we watched the recording again. And that's when we noticed it. The door handle. Still moving. Even harder, I'd taken my hand away. Both cameras caught it. Inside and out. And just before I panicked, just before I turned, the fence gave a little jolt. As if something had pushed it. But there were no holes. No cuts. No way for anyone to slip through. No shadows, no smoke, no strange lights. Just me. Alone in the night. Jumping out of my skin, I kept replaying it in my head. When that figure burst forward full speed, did the light flick on for them or for me? I couldn't remember. It was too fast. No one wanted to admit anything had happened. They said it was tricks in the moonlight and overactive imagination, too much coffee, branches against the chain links. And maybe they were right, maybe. I didn't argue, I didn't make a fuss. That no one used the back door again that night, that stayed locked. Hours later, before dawn, the morning shift began to trickle in. I sat there at the desk with the longest employed guard beside me. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both knew something had been there. And it hadn't been caught on camera. He watched the cameras in silence while I typed. Minutes before clocking out, he cleared his throat. I never really liked the North End, he said. It feels like someone's eyes are always on me. It was the most he'd ever spoken to me in over a year of working together. And that alone made the words heavier. I didn't quit. I stayed another 7 months, until the company was bought out. Overnights ended, day shifts stretched thinner, less money, less people. There was never another incident, but I never went out there again. I stopped smoking, took my breaks in the lobby, made excuses to linger with co-workers, and I think a few of us did the same. I've never had another moment like it, never felt my imagination run away with me. And I don't believe it did that night. The door handle jerking down, that was proof. Proof I wasn't imagining. No one ever brought it up again. When people asked about the factory, everyone just said it was boring. Nothing ever happened there. I'd smile, keep my story to myself. But I wondered if anyone else was holding their own. Maybe letting them slip out after a few beers, maybe laughing about the haunted factory. I've heard stories of shadow people, but never like this, not here. One friend insisted it was an alien. I don't think so. I think it was something else, something not human.